Before we get on with this video, I have to ask this question. Would you like to see Trump as the president? Obviously, but Vivek as the VP. Take a look at this.
The former president pleading not guilty today at his historic third arraignment now on charges of trying to use his authority to stay in power. The question is, will the new charges actually change his primary opponents and the way they handle Trump on the trail? Joining me now, Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. Thank you for joining us this evening. Vivek, I will say today you did announce at a campaign event that you would not actually say that Biden was legitimately elected. And I wonder why it is you are reluctant to acknowledge that.
Well, precisely what I said in New Hampshire earlier today is that big tech is actually the one that interfered with the election. There is good evidence, I'm data-driven, strong polling data that said that if that Hunter Biden laptop story had been released rather than suppressed on the eve of that election, that likely would have changed the electoral result. That is hard fact in this country. Now, from the New York Times to CNN, we'll admit that was true and grounded in fact, and a lot of corruption that was laid to bear then, that was systematically suppressed.
Damn.
And I think that is the single greatest form of election interference risk that we face in this election as well, is technology companies suppressing valid information that the voters need to access to make informed decisions. And I stand by that.
Well, Vivek, I'm glad you mentioned. I'll, of course, leave it to voters to decide what was going to be the reason that they would choose a particular candidate. But because you say you are evidence-driven and you want to make sure that the voters have all the information that they need to make an informed decision about who represent them, do you agree that it should have an opportunity, these cases against Donald Trump should have the opportunity to have airing before the actual voters? They have a decision as either the jurors or also as voters to know how they should actually select their next president.
So I want to say something very clearly. My self-interest would be to have Donald Trump eliminated from competition. I'm polling at third in the Republican national primary right now. And you know what? If Trump were out of the way, it'd be a lot easier for me. But I don't want to win this election that way. On principle, not on politics, on principle. We should not be a country where the party in power uses police force to indict its political opponents in the midst of an election. And Laura, I have a basic rule of thumb. If you are going to indict a political opponent in the middle of an election, it better darn well not be based on a novel, untested legal theory. Yet that's exactly the case in each of the three indictments.
Well, your head nod and go.
No accident that you see three independent indictments on novel legal theories coming down at the exact same time during an election. And I think that this is going to be a grave threat to public trust in the justice system going forward. I'm in this race to unite the country. And I'm sad to say that as our next president, which I expect to be, it's going to make my job that much more difficult to unite this nation when we have set this precedent of the politicization and weaponization of our justice system.
Well, 2 points. One, there's truly nothing novel about a conspiracy charge against somebody. It's something that's often charged against a variety of defendants and in and out of who have been the former president or just everyday Americans. It's why it's part of the criminal code. But on the second issue of the weaponization, do you have concerns that this talking point that is raised oftentimes about the Biden administration or the Department of Justice being weaponized? I mean, we're talking about 115 or more thousand employees of the Department of Justice, 40 separate departments and 40 separate counterparts, et cetera. You've got divisions like national security and antitrust and tax and civil rights, just to name a few. So to suggest that there is some weaponization, do you think that it would be very difficult if you, in fact, do get the responsibility to lead the executive branch, that you are beginning with the proposition that the entirety of the Department of Justice is weaponized?
So I want to respectfully disagree with the first part of what you said. This is absolutely an unprecedented legal theory. There's a Supreme Court case called Alvarez in 2012 that expressly held that a candidate for political office and a publicly elected official has a First Amendment right to engage in, yes, false speech. That's hard Supreme Court case precedent. Is that good judgment on behalf of that elected official? No, it's not. But every bad judgment is not a crime. So this is absolutely unprecedented. It is also unprecedented for the four co-conspirators to be attorneys who are offering legal advice. For an attorney to use a legal theory and be criminalized for it, for giving a client advice, that endangers the legal system as we know it.
Yep, completely.
So my view is that many of these bureaucracies, starting with the FBI, have become corrupted at a level that is really incorrigible. That's why I've said as U.S. president, I will shut down the FBI. We'll take the 35,000 employees, 15,000 of them that are agents doing real work on the front lines. We will reorganize them to the U.S. Marshals, to the Drug Enforcement Agency, to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, agencies that have not been politicized. But this is an agency whose history is still dating back to the legacy of J. Edgar Hoover. It is still the J. Edgar Hoover building of the FBI that people are walking into. And the remarkable part of this is just rewind a few decades ago, it was the left, Lauren, that was actually complaining about the politicization and the unfairness of the FBI.
Yep.
Today, it's the right. To me, it's not a partisan issue, left versus right. That bureaucracy is a formula for corruption. And that's why, as our next president, I will shut it down.
His ability to be able to disagree, get his point across, and do it in such a firm way without, doing it in such an aggressive, offensive, a boastful or egotistical way, it's like unprecedented. I mean, you can look at the way she's responded and tell that she wants to be offended, right? Wants to be offended. But I definitely can't say that this host is bad at all. She's definitely let him speak his points without interrupting, allowing him to give clear and concise sentences without involving herself to try to trip him up in any kind of way. But that's just so far. I'm just saying, how many times are y'all gonna try to arrest this man before he can potentially become the president? It doesn't seem like there's going to be any shortage of attempts to go after Trump and try to get him out of the race whatsoever. But every time that they do somehow get to the illusion of a finish line, it turns out to be a pack of lies, but no accountability. But I like this comment right here. It says, CNN, quote, "Thank you for the evidence and facts, but we are going to have to disagree," end quote. And although this host is cool, let's not forget, this is the same network that dismisses the crimes of the Biden crime family.
Well, many people did not have on their bingo card that Republicans would be calling the FBI or the law enforcement entities of our nation in this fashion and disparaging them. But you will not get argument from me about the legacy of one J. Edgar Hoover, particularly as somebody who prosecuted in the Civil Rights Division. But what you will get some pushback, I think, from a great variety of people is this notion of the unprecedented nature of what we're talking about. And I want to home in yet again on this point. Conspiracy is quite a common charge to have, but also First Amendment and protected speech is something that's
conspiracy
so foundational.
To commit what, Lauren? You know better.
Well, I do know better, which is why I stated it quite precisely, that it is, in fact, a commonly actually charged crime. But the actual indictment does outline what the allegations are here. But my point is with respect to the protected speech. Certainly, there are the Supreme Court cases that talk about the fact that protected and political speech is sacrosanct. But the notion here, they allege that it went beyond that in the form of action and conspiring to try to undermine the peaceful transition of power. And for that, I wonder, you've made it very clear that you intend and hope to be able to, if you are the president of the United States, to pardon Donald Trump. Do you think that the American people have a right, however, for the justice process to conclude before you make that statement?
So look, my assumption is that the worst statement of the facts for the defendant was exactly what you see in the indictment, in each of these three indictments. That's a reasonable assumption. The prosecution states its harshest case in the indictment. Mm-hmm. I've read all three, and on all three of the indictments, I believe they are politicized. I believe they leverage novel legal theories. I believe if it had been anybody without the last name of Trump, they would not have brought those indictments under those circumstances. And in the interest of moving this nation forward, and yes, that will be my job as our next president, to unite our country and to move forward towards a national revival, it will absolutely be in the interests of this nation to heal and to move forward by making sure that A, we pardon Trump, and B, we avoid the precedent of this kind of politicization of the justice system. That's the clear right answer. And we can go through each of those indictments from the original one in New York, Alvin Bragg, an individual who actually pledged to run for office on the pledge of investigating this man, who brought a first-in-class legal theory, to the documents case, which failed to mention the Presidential Records Act, to now this new one, which actually criminalizes the seeking of good faith legal advice, calling that a conspiracy instead, and completely flaunting the precedent in Alvarez. It is not an accident that you see these three cases at the same time.
Yep.
And I'm sorry to say the people who have lost their trust in the justice system have lost that trust for good reason. And it's going to make my job, the next president's job, that much more difficult to rebuild it. Which is what also gives me my sense of urgency to speak out, even though it's against my interest, running against Trump in this primary.
On the precedent point of it, and again, I push back quite sternly, of course, on the notion that there is something novel about a case involving some of the claims that were made, obviously, in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents. But we need not quibble about our own interpretation of an indictment. I'll leave that for jurors. But I will ask you, when you're looking at all of this and you are looking at the precedent, do you have some concerns about a precedent that you will not seek to pursue justice if you are a prosecutor against somebody simply because they are a candidate for office? Wouldn't that set an awfully dangerous precedent if we were to simply untest that? And I note, of course, Jack Smith is somebody who has been prosecuting cases against other elected officials, including some who do not have the last name Trump. I'll mention just a few: John Edwards and Bob Menendez, people in The Hague as well. And we could go on in the public integrity section as well. Do you have concerns that there is going to be a real concern and a loss of faith among the American people with respect to how they perceive our institutions if they do not even endeavor to pursue justice?
My view is that nobody is above the law,
That's
but
right.
nobody is below the law either. And you know what? Even if you just take each of these indictments, there are deeply suspect circumstances, facts, omissions of fact, and both law. And my view is there's a dual standard of justice in the United States now. I've also said as part of my campaign, I have pledged, for example, to also pardon Julian Assange. This is an individual who sits in foreign exile. Even as the person who leaked the documents to Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, had her sentence commuted by President Obama because she's a member of a favored political class. She's transgender. Again, that's two standards of justice based on your political beliefs. Now you have one for Biden, another for Trump. This is not sustainable in our country. I think we have to have one standard of justice for all Americans. I think you and I have a deep disagreement on whether or not this indictment actually sticks to prior legal precedents. I think none of the three do. They're all novel in their own way. And I just think it's a disastrous judgment in setting not a precedent of letting political candidates go. No, as you know, plenty of political candidates who have committed cut and dry fraud claims or otherwise have appropriately been prosecuted, Menendez on down. But the reality is that in this particular case, the fact that this came in the middle of an election, the timing of this, all the cases coming at the exact same time, let's call a spade a spade. This is to stop one man from successfully holding office. That's not the way we want to do things in the United States of America. The voters should consider this information when making their judgment of how they vote.
That's
but
right.
Not using the police state to eliminate competition from running. That is an awful precedent in this country. And I am worried that if we fail to acknowledge that, you know, what we saw, even on dark days like January 1st, 2021, January 6th, 2021, I worry that that will be the beginning of our march towards a national divorce. That is not where I want to see us go. I am deeply worried about it. I'm in this race to lead a national revival, but we have to be able to move on from the past to the future to do it.
I understand your position. I think President Obama would deeply disagree with your assessment of the reasons why he was motivated to keep the sentence of at least Chelsea Manning. But finally, I guess it's very clear. I don't think either of us will be a part of the jury selection process in any of these three different indictments. And if there is a fourth, somehow I think they're going to pass us over.
Oh, that's the fourth already.
Process. But as you say, you are evidence and data driven. So I wonder if the juries will have an opportunity to see that evidence in a trial before they make their decision.
They should.
Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Y'all seen the little shade she tried to throw at the end? Neither one of us is going to be jurors. We're going to see how it plays out. You got to be a fool to think that somehow they're not weaponizing the police state to try to take over this. I can't even say the word, but the 2024 situation. How can you not think they are not enforcing authority when you see the timing of everything that's happening? Come on, bro. Like he said, call a spade a spade. As much as I don't like CNN, I'm thinking that it's actually a good thing for the people right now when you have moments like this, because the people get to sit back and go, oh, wait, hold on. Something's not adding up. You start to realize that the swamp is a lot deeper than you thought. Talking about some Obama ain't going, like he pretty much insinuating that Obama ain't going to like what you had to say about the So you got to give Vivek, a pat on the back, because it is against his best interest to be speaking in Trump's favor in any kind of way, being that they are on the Republican ballot together. But I mean, you got to respect the fact that he decided to, stick his neck out and be honest and be real about it. Salute for that. And as we know, since the release of this video, they've already went through with the fourth indictment. So, and it sucks. Again. And this is why I say Trump and Vivek as a combo, him as the VP, Vivek that is, man, that'd be pretty cool. 'Cause, he has a pretty level mind, and he's not trying to pick sides. He's just calling it like it is. Right is right, wrong is wrong. And again, a spade is Vivek is so good at what he does. He even have Democrats switch sides. This comment right here says, I am a registered Democrat, but would definitely vote for Vivek. I mean, I got to agree. It's always good to see a citizen who isn't a part of the swamp or the hypocritical system. One suggestion I got for CNN is learn how to ask the question instead of beating around the bush and adding on so much tail to it. She even managed to still have the first and the last word. We got some people that may be in favor of the whole Vivek and Trump combination in the presidential office. We got one comment that says, well, if Ramsaway does not win the election, they wrote it like this. He's definitely will make a great vice president. We know he meant to say he. Anyhow, we got right up under that. Vivek is spot on. We need to take out politics from all three-letter institution and fire people that dwell in corruption. I know that's right. And that's why you got to even respect this man even more. The fact that he's able to go on any platform, left or right, and be able to answer any question willingly and not shy away from it or give BS, Kareen answer. CNN's persistence in undermining the American mind is pathetic.